Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If you'd like to request updates on any novel, consider becoming a Patreon or Ko-fi member. Based on your membership tier, I'll create additional parts for the novel you're interested in. Normally, I'll only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel due to limited time. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really helps.
After leaving the restaurant, Su-young walked a straight path through the streets until he reached the other end of the city, where the exit gate was stationed. When he reached the gate, Su-young noticed a large group of people and a few carriages waiting right outside the gate. They were all equipped with weapons and armors, looking as though they were about to enter a battle. There were even a few people in robes that looked to be disciples of some sect mixed in with the crowd. By the time Su-young passed the guards and stepped out of the city, the majority of the crowd was already looking at him with many different kinds of gazes. Some gazes were filled with envy and others looked at him with disdain. But of course there were also a few females there that looked at him with adoring lights in their eyes. Under the gazes of over 50 people, Su-young calmly walked the road, his expression as tranquil as a still lake. He didn't care what they were doing, nor was he interested. However, his ears couldn't help but pick up the whispers of the crowd. Isn't that a disciple from the Profound Blossom sect? The only shameless sect that chooses its disciple by their looks first and talent second? Yeah, that sect. All they do is screw each other day and night without proper training, hence why they usually have a high cultivation base but zero experience in combat. They only cultivate for their looks, so they wouldn't care even if they only have high cultivation bases and nothing else. Su-young acted as though he didn't hear anything when the disciples from another sect within the crowd spoke badly about his sect, but he was laughing deep inside. While their words were harsh, there was actually some truth behind it. Profound Blossom sect was known for their beautiful people, vulgar practices, and high cultivation base. However, the majority of its disciple had little to no experience when it came to techniques for combat, at least that was true within the outer court. From what Su-young received from his memories and what he personally witnessed in the outer court disciples are usually so focused on increasing their own cultivation base that they barely bother to train in real techniques used for combat. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that most outer court disciples would rather spend their time in bed with their partner than to actually pick up a sword and train until they sweat. Suddenly, somebody from the front shouted out loud, causing everybody to look at him. It was a bulky man with a bald head. All right, everybody, we are ready to travel to the Thunder Valley. If you are not ready by now, then you should just go back home. Some of the crowd laughed at the bulky man's words. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask. How long will the journey to the Thunder Valley take? Asked a skinny man with a bow in his hands. 5 days, give or take. Do you have any idea how many lightning cats will be there for us to slay? We are unsure of the exact number, but they are in the hundreds at least, said the bulky man, and he continued, Listen here. There will be a lot of lightning cats running around and it will be a difficult subjugation. However, this just means that there will be more wealth for all of us to share afterward. A thundering battle cry suddenly resounded, causing Su-young's hairs to tremble. What a lousy crowd. Su-young thought to himself, and he looked at the paper in his hands. This mission seems to be bigger than expected. It has been some time since Su-young left the Swift Feather City. He calmly walked down the middle of the wide path with his hands behind his back, looking as though he was taking a stroll in a park. He was looking left and right, seemingly interested in Mother Nature. Behind him was a large group of 50 people, all of them watching Su-young in the lead with weird expressions. Why does it look like we're all being led by that dog? Someone from the crowd purposely said out loud. Now that you mention it, why are we walking at his pace? We can't go any faster because we are already cramped as it is. This is unacceptable. We won't make it there by next week at this rate. Hey, brat in the white robes. Get out of the way before we run you over. The bulky man shouted in his obnoxiously loud voice. Hearing the loud commotion coming from the back, Su-young turned his head around and glanced at the crowd. However, he didn't stop walking and returned to looking at the front after a single glance. His simple yet arrogant action instantly angered many in the crowd. You fucking brat. Are you picking a fight with all of us by yourself? Simply courting death. Su Yang didn't bother turning around for the second time and continued to walk at a casual pace. Everybody within the crowd was at least at the 7th level of the elementary spirit realm, with a few of them at the early profound spirit realm. Such a large group radiated an overwhelming pressure that would easily scare anyone weak-hearted, yet in Su Yang's eyes they were only a bunch of fools with loud mouths. Humph. Let's see if you dare ignore me after I start swinging my axe at you. The bulky man stepped forward and approached Su Yang with a wide steel axe in his grasp. It was at this moment Su Yang suddenly stopped walking and turned around to face the crowd. I won't tell you to not swing that toy at me, but just know that you will not step foot inside the Thunder Valley once you do ever, Su Yang said in a low and calm voice, his face still as tranquil as ever. However, his low-sounding voice was as loud as a fly buzzing directly in the ears of the bulky man. What did you just say to me, you fucking brat? The bulky man's forehead began popping with veins the moment he heard Su Yang's threat, his face red from anger. Su Yang smiled and said, You heard me. He then turned around and began walking again. When Su Yang turned around and walked, the bulky man exploded in anger, his eyes red. The bulky man was a cultivator at the 3rd level of the profound spirit realm, and he has never been so deeply disrespected by anyone, let alone a disciple from the shameless Profound Blossom sect. You fucking brat. Who do you think you are? The bulky man suddenly pounced at Su Yang from a distance like a tiger with his steel axe raised high into the air. The steel axe quickly dropped towards Su Yang's head. However, just inches before the axe could touch even a strand of hair on his head, Su Yang made a swift turn and unsheathed the sword by his side. A flicker of light flashed, followed by a tyrannical pressure that was filled with killing intent. Once the crowd behind the bulky man felt the killing intent, their legs stopped working and their bodies trembled as though it was freezing cold. Although the pressure only lasted for a brief second before it disappeared, it was enough to halt the movements of everybody there, even the horses pulling the carriages. Instantly after the killing intent passed, the bulky man's frozen body in the air began moving again. It began falling backward like a stone statue. The body fell slowly and felt like it took forever in the witness's eyes, but when it finally touched the ground, everybody there was shocked to find the head missing from the bulky man's body. A few people from the crowd suddenly looked up into the sky after they saw a shadow spinning in the air. When they noticed that it was actually the bulky man's head that was spinning in the air, they screamed in horror. Not to mention the flying head still had the angry expression of the bulky man before his death. Su Yang retrieved his sword at the same moment the flying head touched the ground. He then looked at the bewildered crowd calmly with a bright smile and said, Since we are all going to the same place with the same objective, why don't we stop this foolishness before I start littering this road with corpses? Though I wouldn't mind warming up before I start hunting at the Thunder Valley. Crowd slowly nodded to his suggestion while swallowing hard. They have never met someone as menacing as this young man from the Profound Blossom sect before. It felt to them as though they were standing in front of the devil himself. Good. Su Yang also nodded. Then let's make this journey worthwhile. He turned around and began walking again. Su Yang's figure quickly disappeared from the crowd's view. When they confirmed that Su Yang was truly gone, the group of people fell to their butts, their body covered in sweat. Who the hell was that? I have never heard of such a frightening existence belonging to the Profound Blossom sect. Who was it that said he was just an outer court disciple? He's clearly powerful enough to become an inner court disciple even in my sect. No, even becoming a core disciple is possible. The group soon continued their journey despite their leader's sudden death. It was not as though they can just go home after coming all the way out here, not to mention the wealth they could obtain from slaying lightning cats. This is a world where the strong eats the weak. It isn't uncommon for a powerful individual like the bulky man to die from defeat, as there would always be someone stronger. 4 days quickly passed. Su Yang has been walking for 4 days without rest, yet he seemed perfectly fine, almost as if he was full of energy. He suddenly noticed an expensive-looking carriage in the distance. It was surrounded by many armored men on horses. The carriage was entirely made out of gold and expensive jade, giving it an exquisite aura, as though it belonged to royalty. Above the carriage was an old man in a gray robe, who was sitting there cross-legged, seemingly in cultivation. Although Su Yang was unable to detect the old man's cultivation base, he was able to guess it just from his experience alone. Heavenly spirit realm, what could someone at his level be doing here, sitting on top of a carrier like some kind of guard? He wondered. What about the person sitting inside the carriage? Who could possibly have enough status to keep a heavenly spirit realm expert as a guard in this mortal world when they are considered masters at the apex? Su Yang was intrigued by the golden carriage and its heavy guard, but he wasn't someone who'd stick his nose into places it doesn't belong, so he only ignored it and silently walked behind it. After some time, the guards finally noticed Su Yang following them. "Senior, should we do something about that kid? He's been following us for quite some time now," said one of the armored guards. The old man slowly opened his eyes, and he turned his gaze to look at Su Yang. However, when he tried to probe him, the old man was surprised to find out that he was unable to see his real cultivation, feeling like he was looking at a cloud of human-figured smoke. However, despite Su Yang's mysterious presence, the old man did not feel any threat or malicious feeling towards him. "Ignore him," he said a moment later. The guards nodded and no longer thought about approaching Su Yang. However, they were still paying attention to him just in case he starts acting suspiciously. What an interesting young man. The old man smiled to himself before closing his eyes again. After walking for a few more hours without any hurdles, the golden carriage suddenly came to a stop. The guard narrowed their gazes at the shadowy figure in the front, and the old man slowly stood up. Seeing this sudden development, Su Yang also halted his steps. The shadowy figure was clad in full black robes with only his two black eyeballs exposed, looking like an assassin. However, a real assassin wouldn't reveal himself this openly and obviously. Is this some kind of joke? The old man opened his mouth to ask the shadowy figure. The Moonlight Blades had sent you, a single Earth Spirit Realm expert here, despite being aware of my presence? The shadowy figure chuckled and said in a hoarse-sounding voice, "I am only here to pass on a message to the young lady inside that carriage on the behalf of my king. If you do not obediently hand over the 100 Poisons body by the time the next full moon is present, then we will have no choice but to take it by force," said the shadowy figure. When the soldiers on the horses heard the message, their eyes radiated with anger. "How imprudent! Have you forgotten who we are? Even if the Moonlight Blades were to attack us with full force, you wouldn't even get past the front gate." One of the guards shouted loudly. "How dare you threaten the young lady? It will only be a matter of time before we find your hideout and wipe you out," said another guard. "Ha!" The shadowy figure burst out laughing. "Of course, if we were to fight you head-on, our Moonlight Blades would stand no chance. However, who do you think we are? You should know better than anyone else that we will never fight fists with fists." Su Yang silently listened to the conversation being held by the two parties, both of them with a seemingly profound background. Although he has never heard of the Moonlight Blades before, they seem to be some sort of faction that lives in the shadow. The 100 Poisons body, huh? Su Yang pondered the name. "Is that all you have to say?" said the old man, who has been silent this whole time. "If that's all, then you may die now." The old man suddenly retrieved a paper fan from inside his robe and gently waved it at the direction of the shadowy figure. A powerful ripple appeared from the paper fan the moment the old man waved it, causing it to fly towards the shadowy figure. However, before the ripple could touch him, the shadowy figure disappeared from where he stood like a ghost, and where he just stood exploded an instant later. The old man suddenly turned to look at Su Yang and shouted, "Watch out!" Knowing that I would die today, I had planned to take a few of your guards with me before I die. However, this kid's face is very annoying to look at, so be gracious that I will take his life instead. The shadowy figure suddenly appeared behind Su Yang with a black dagger in his grasp raised and ready to strike. However, unfortunately for the shadowy figure, Su Yang's grasp was already on the sword handle by his side before the shadowy figure even disappeared. A profound and fierce light flashed within Su Yang's eyes, and an overwhelming amount of sword intent exploded from within his body, causing the shadowy figure to freeze for an instant from the sudden pressure. The instant the shadowy figure was frozen from shock, Su Yang swiftly turned around and unsheathed his sword, sending a powerful wave of sword intent towards the shadowy figure. The shadowy figure couldn't even scream in pain before the sword intent effortlessly sliced his body in half like a sword cutting a piece of paper. After cutting the shadowy figure in half, Su Yang coldly snorted at the corpse on the floor. "Did you think that I wouldn't notice your obnoxious gaze staring at me? This is not the first time something like this has happened before." The guards and the old man watched Su Yang return his sword into its scabbard with shocked expressions. What just happened? At one moment the shadowy figure disappeared from their views, and an instant later he became a corpse with his body cleanly sliced in half, laying beside that young man who has been suspiciously following them. Sword intent. When the guards finally returned from their astonishment, they realized that it was sword intent that the young man had used to kill the shadowy figure. What terrifying sword intent! Even the heavenly spirit realm old man was shocked by the destructive power and pressure shown by the sword intent. It was something even a heavenly spirit realm expert like him would not be able to replicate. The old man jumped off the carriage and approached Su Yang. "Young man, what is your name?" he asked. "Xiaoyang. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?" Su Yang did not instantly answer and instead silently looked at the old man, seemingly in deep thoughts. When the old man saw his calm expression, he smiled and said, "I was immensely impressed by your sword intent, but your appearance makes it difficult for me to see you as a mere junior. What does my age matter? The only thing that matters in a fight is one's strength and wisdom. Anything else is irrelevant." Su Yang's words left the old man speechless. "Senior Zhong, is everything fine out there?" A sweet feminine voice resounded from inside the golden carriage, causing the old man to turn around. "Young lady, the threat is no longer here," said the old man named Senior Zhong. "Then let's continue our journey. We don't have much time to spare here." Senior Zhong looked at Su Yang with a bitter smile. "Although I wish to talk more to you about your sword intent, we are in a hurry. I am Senior Zhong from the Divine Sword Temple. If you ever happen to have the chance to visit, you can show anyone there this and they will bring you to me." Senior Zhong handed Su Yang a yellow jade slip. "If I get the chance." Su Yang casually accepted the jade slip. When Su Yang showed no reactions after he mentioned the Divine Sword Temple, Senior Zhong was slightly surprised. Was it ignorance, or was the name Divine Sword Temple not enough to even lift his brows? Senior Zhong became more interested in Su Yang's background, but alas, he did not have the time to stay around to learn more about him. After their short interaction, Senior Zhong went into the carriage before they began moving again. Inside the carriage, Senior Zhong sat in front of a female figure, her face covered by a veil. "The moonlight blades are really relentless," sighed the veiled figure. The sigh was so heartfelt that Senior Zhong could feel the exhaustion in her heart. "The young lady does not have to worry. We will find their hideout soon and wipe them from this earth," said Senior Zhong. His voice was clear and filled with confidence, yet his eyes were dim. The Moonlight Blades could be considered the most secretive and deadly underground organization to have ever existed in this world. They are so well hidden that even after 100 years of active operations, nobody has been able to unveil their main hideout, only minor branches. "I'm sure you will," said the young lady in a tender voice, and she continued, "Thank you, Senior Zhong. I did not do anything to be deserving of your praises." He shook his head, refusing her gratitude. "But you protected me just now." Senior Zhong chuckled slightly and said, "I would naturally protect the young lady, however, I really did not do anything just now. The one who dealt with the assassin was a young man." "A young man?" The young lady sounded intrigued, and Senior Zhong began recalling to her what had happened. "The assassin came here to deliver the message knowing that he will die afterward, and he had intended to deal some damage to us. But at the last second, he decided to surprise attack this young man instead. Why was he attacked? Is he okay? When Senior Zhong recalled what the assassin had said, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Because his face was annoying. The young lady covered her mouth from surprise after hearing his words. A bystander was attacked solely for the reason that he had an annoying face? What kind of development was this? As for his well-being, not only did he manage to escape unharmed, but he also turned the situation around and killed the assassin with sword intent. Sword intent? That terrifying sword intent I felt just now didn't belong to Senior Zhong, she asked in a puzzled tone. Senior Zhong shook his head in regret and said, I wouldn't be able to emit such powerful sword intent even if I tried. The young lady was truly in shock now. She knew Senior Zhong's demeanor very well, and his capabilities as a sword master could be considered top-notch even amongst masters. But for him to sound so disheartened and inferior when speaking about himself was a first. This young man, who is he? I don't know his background, only his name, Xiaoyang. Although he looks like a teenager, his demeanor says otherwise. If I had to guess, then he must be some revered sword master in disguise. Xiaoyang, is he still out there right now? Why don't you invite him inside to have a talk? The young lady's words surprised Senior Zhong. But we don't know his background. While I can't sense any threat from him, I don't think it would be a good idea to have him so close to the young lady. I am interested in this sword master who even our esteemed Senior Zhong cannot comprehend. And since he's strong enough to kill someone from the moonlight blades, I'd like to at least create some kind of connection between us. Through a moment of silence, Senior Zhong nodded and left the carriage. Outside the carriage, Su Yang was still trying to recall the name 100 Poison's body mentioned by the assassin. I remember now. It is a royal-grade heavenly constitution. Anyone with the 100 Poison's body would be immune to all poisons at the mortal rank. Su Yang finally recalled why he found the name so familiar. Heavenly constitutions are special bodies that grant the person with it unique and sometimes heaven-defying talents, such as the 100 Poison body that allows the person to be immune to all poison and even cultivate with it. Those with heavenly constitutions are all considered heaven-sent prodigies and are usually cultivated at a young age with all sorts of valuable resources and miracle medicines. Heavenly constitutions, like techniques and weapons, have their own levels of rarity and quality. The 100 Poison's body, for example, was at the royal grade, the lowest grade in the heavenly constitution rankings, whilst the superior 1,000 Poison's body would be an imperial grade heavenly constitution. A royal grade heavenly constitution, huh? Su Yang's gaze narrowed at the carriage. Suddenly, Senior Zhong came out of the carriage and approached Su Yang again. Young man, my young lady would like to invite you into the carriage for a little talk. She wants to personally thank you for dealing with the assassin, Senior Zhong said to him in a different tone than previously. Su Yang looked at Senior Zhong's serious face and took another quick glance at the carriage. Very well, he accepted their offer. When the guards noticed Su Yang follow Senior Zhong into the carriage, their jaws dropped from shock. How could Senior Zhong let some stranger into the carriage when their young lady was also inside? However, as much as they wanted to complain and block Su Yang, none of them dared to open their mouth when they recalled the prowess he showed, not to mention Senior Zhong being beside him. Once Su Yang entered the carriage, he was greeted by an elegant figure clad in red robes sitting on one side of the carriage. Although he couldn't see her face, his vast experience told him that she was definitely a great beauty. On the other hand, when the young lady saw Su Yang's handsome face for the first time, she was greatly surprised by his appearance, even fascinated. When Senior Zhong talked about him, he didn't mention anything about Su Yang being this handsome of a young man, which dumbfounded the young lady for a second when she saw him, as she wasn't expecting someone this handsome. Su Yang sat on the other side of the carriage beside Senior Zhong with a nonchalant expression on his face, seemingly unfazed by the situation. You must be the great sword master Xiaoyang. My surname is Xie Xingfeng. I have heard about you from Senior Zhong, and I'd like to personally thank you for dealing with that assassin from the Moonlight Blades, said the young lady with her fair hand extended for a handshake. Su Yang chuckled inside when she called him a sword master. You don't have to thank me. I did what I did only to protect myself, he said as he shook her hands that were soft and smooth. Senior Zhong was secretly shocked when he saw Xie Xingfang extend her hands out for a handshake, as it was something unthinkable for someone of her status. He wanted to say something, but alas, Su Yang's quick movements allowed him to touch her hands before he could even open his mouth. Xie Xingfang looked at their handshake with a somewhat dazed expression. She didn't know why she willingly extended her arms for a handshake. It was almost as though her body moved without thinking. It's my first time feeling the skin of a male that's not in my family, she thought to herself as the feeling of Su Yang's warm hand gently held her hand. Perhaps it was because of Su Yang's natural charm and presence, but Xie Xingfang didn't know why she reached out her hands to him. Even Senior Zhong was surprised to see his young lady, who has a tendency to stay away from others, willingly offer her skin for another to feel. My hand, Su Yang said a moment later when Xie Xingfang didn't release her grasp after some time. Where are my manners? I apologize for that. Xie Xingfang quickly retrieved her hand with a blushing face when she realized that she had been holding his hands for an extended amount of time. Her actions caused Senior Zhong to widen his eyes from shock. What on earth is going on in here? Where did all her elegance go? It all seemed to have disappeared the moment she saw Su Yang. Ahem. Xie Xingfang cleared her throat. Senior brother Xiao, if you don't mind me asking, where are you from? She then asked. Ignoring the way she addressed him with intimacy, Su Yang casually lifted his arm into the air to show her the blossom arts on his sleeves. I am from the Profound Blossom Sect, he said. The Profound Blossom Sect? Xie Xingfang showed a puzzled expression behind her veil. She has never heard of such a place before. Senior Zhong also showed a questioning expression. Not even he has heard of such a place. However, for them to have such a profound sword master within their ranks, how could he not have heard of them before? We are not from around here, so I do not know of such a place, unfortunately, said Xie Xingfang in a regrettable tone. However, for them to have someone as powerful as you, it must surely be a special place. Su Yang smiled and shook his head. It really isn't as impressive as you'd think. In fact, if I could leave, I would. Senior Zhong's eyes shone with a bright and sharp light when he heard Su Yang's words, and he said, Then how about joining my divine sword sect? We would greatly appreciate a talented sword master such as yourself to join our ranks. I am sure that the disciples there would also appreciate having a new master who could teach them about sword intents. I appreciate the offer, but there are still things I have to do there. Once I am done, perhaps I could travel to this divine sword sect. Su Yang kindly refused his offer without refusing it entirely. Senior Zhong was a bit surprised. For someone to refuse the divine sword sect so quickly, this was a first even for him. Could this profound blossom sect really be this profound? However, he wasn't entirely disheartened because Su Yang did not entirely refuse his offer, even hinting that he might join them in the future. Then until you finish your business there, we will wait patiently. Just know that our divine sword sect will always have our doors open for anyone talented in the sword, he said a moment later. Senior brother Xiao, you seem very young, even younger than me. How old are you exactly? Although it was hidden from sight, Xie Xingfang's eyes flashed with an anticipating light. Su Yang only smiled at her question and did not give her a proper reply. They seemed to be really interested in his age. However, he wasn't willing to reveal that at the moment as it might be too shocking for them. After all, what kind of 16-year-old could use sword intent that was superior to even a heavenly spirit realm expert's sword intent? Not even prodigies could possibly manage such a feat. Seeing how Su Yang didn't want to reveal his age, Xie Xingfang was disappointed in her heart. What about you, senior brother Xiao? Surely you have a lot of questions to ask, especially after experiencing that unfortunate event. Xie Xingfang decided to treat her previous question as though it never happened, as she didn't want the atmosphere to turn awkward. Senior Zhong felt that it was extremely rude for Su Yang to ignore her question, as it would be considered blasphemy if he knew of her background. But seeing how Xie Xingfang decided to ignore it, he also decided to do the same. There has been something on my mind after that minor event. Su Yang narrowed his eyes at Xie Xingfang's alluring figure, and he continued, "Your heavenly constitution, the 100 poisons body." Before Su Yang could even finish his question, Senior Zhong's eyes widened with alert, and his aura radiated with killing intent as his hands instinctively reached for Su Yang's open neck with a clawing gesture, like an eagle grabbing its prey. However, just before he could touch Su Yang, Xie Xingfang's thundering voice resounded, "Halt!" Senior Zhong's movements instantly froze, his clawed hand mere millimeters away from choking Su Yang's pale neck, who didn't even flinch the slightest from his sudden attack. Su Yang sat there silently, his expression still as calm as ever, looking as though he was not even a bit concerned about the situation. He suddenly closed his eyes and said in a calm voice, "As rare as your heavenly constitution may be in this world, I do not have the slightest interest in your royal grade 100 poisons body. Even if it grants the person absolute resistance to all poison, its ability is, unfortunately, limited to mortal-grade poisons. It'd be useless once you encounter a spirit-grade poison." Su Yang's words dumbfounded both Senior Zhong, who was still prepared to continue his attack, and Xie Xingfang, who was an expert in the art of poisons. "If you are not interested, then why are you mentioning it?" asked Senior Zhong in a serious voice, sounding as though he was questioning a suspect who was behind bars. "It's just that it is my first time seeing someone with a heavenly constitution here, so I got curious and wanted to ask if I can take a look at it." When Su Yang said "here," there was a profound and mysterious feeling to it. Of course, this wasn't his first time seeing someone with a heavenly constitution, as every partner he had in his previous life had heaven-defying heavenly constitutions. However, as for this world's heavenly constitution, this would truly be his first time seeing one, and he wanted to confirm whether or not it was the same as the heavenly constitutions from his previous life. "Why will you want to look at her heavenly constitution? How shameless and bold of you! Do you have any idea what kind of nonsense you are asking? Are you courting death?" When Senior Zhong heard Su Yang's insane request, he nearly pounced at him with open jaw. Even Xie Xingfang couldn't help but blush behind the veil covering her face, as this was the first time someone has ever dared to be so bold in front of her. For Su Yang to ask her if he could see her heavenly constitution, he was basically asking her if he could see her 100 poisons body. In other words, he wanted to see her naked body. Su Yang looked at Senior Zhong's disgusted expression with a frown. "What are you talking about?" "Wah, but you clearly just asked to look at her heavenly constitution." "I sure did." He nodded without a second thought. Senior Zhong's face turned red from anger. He felt that Su Yang was trying to make him look like a fool. To look at her heavenly constitution means to look at her bare body. How shameless do you have to be to ask the young lady that? If the young lady didn't stop me, I would have already killed you. Su Yang looked at him with wide eyes. "Her bare body? You must surely be jesting. I am merely asking her to show me her palms so I can take a look at her meridians." "Who said anything about looking at her body?" he said in a surprised tone, sounding as though he was truly innocent in this matter. "Though, I wouldn't mind going through the trouble to use that method." Senior Zhong nearly puked up a mouthful of blood after hearing his words. If Xie Xingfang wasn't sitting in front of them, he would have already slapped him a few times by now. "Young lady, I shall refuse his audacious request for you," he said in a stern voice. Su Yang shrugged his shoulders and said, "Then my business here is done. Albeit a bit short, it was nice talking to you, but I will be taking my leave now as my destination is just ahead." "You are heading to the Thunder Valley?" Senior Zhong asked him in a surprised tone. The strongest beasts there would be around the profound spirit realm, so why would someone as powerful as Su Yang, who has the capabilities to kill someone at the Earth spirit realm with ease, want to go there? Just a small mission. "Then, if you'll excuse me." "Wait." Just as Su Yang was about to open the door to leave, Xie Xingfang suddenly called for him. However, Xie Xingfang herself did not know why she stopped him, as she would normally never ask someone who wanted to leave to stay. "It's just my palm, right? Even if it was to protect yourself, the fact that you assisted us in dealing with the moonlight blades does not change," said Xie as she extended her fair hands for him again. "Young lady, that kind of physical contact would be absolutely inappropriate for someone of your standing. We have already shaken hands, this wouldn't be much different. But young lady..." "You heard the young lady, old man." Su Yang suddenly grabbed Xie hands in one smooth motion, which greatly startled her who wasn't fully prepared. Old man? Senior Zhong almost couldn't believe his ears. Ever since he was young, there had never been anyone who dared to address him in such a tone. After grabbing Xie hands again, Su Yang closed his eyes and became silent. Suddenly, his body emitted a profound aura, causing the atmosphere to feel somewhat ancient. The unexpected change caused both Senior Zhong and Xie to feel apprehensive. Carriage suddenly became so quiet that only the sound of the horses and the carriage moving could be heard. This quiet atmosphere lasted for a few moments. When Su Yang opened his eyes again, he showed a somewhat relieved smile. "It's the same," he mumbled in low voice. "What's the same?" asked Xie. It's just as I remembered it. I had thought that it would be different than how I imagined it, but it looks like that was unnecessary worry," he said after a small pause. After analyzing Xie heavenly constitution, Su Yang confirmed that its structure and functions are the same as the heavenly constitution that he was familiar with in his previous life. Learning this, Su Yang was in a joyous mood, as this discovery meant that there was a chance that he was still in the same universe but in a different world. Perhaps this is a world separated from the four worlds? A fifth world, he pondered. Su Yang looked at Xie directly at her veil and smiled. "Thank you for listening to my selfish request," he said in a clear voice. Xie couldn't help but feel that Su Yang was able to see through the veil and straight into her eyes when he looked at her, and she smiled. "It's only a small matter, there is no need to be so humble. Although it may be a small matter to you, it is something of great importance to me. As a show of my gratitude to you, I shall part to you the method to cultivate the 100 poisons body into the imperial grade 1000 poisons body." The already silent place suddenly turned even quieter, and both Senior Zhong and Xie stared at Su Yang with wide eyes filled with shock, especially Xie, who was barely able to think properly at this moment. What did he just say? That not only does he have the method to cultivate my 100 poisons body into the 1000 poisons body, but he is also willing to give me such a priceless technique? Why? Xie stared at him with wide eyes behind her veil. She has never been this shocked before in her entire life. To the method to cultivate my 100 poisons body into a 1000 poisons body? Could a technique like that really exist under this heaven? If so, then why would you give it to someone like me, someone you've only just met? Xie asked with a trembling voice. Despite her colossal background and her family's enormous wealth, she couldn't help but tremble in excitement at this technique that may or may not even exist. "There's no point in keeping it for myself since I do not have 100 poisons body, so I might as well give it to someone that actually has a use for it. I am no saint, but it will always be a personal pleasure of mine to make beautiful ladies, one such as yourself, happy, especially if it only takes a few small gifts." Su Yang replied in a calm voice, sounding as though he really did not care that he was going to share such a priceless technique to some stranger. Beautiful lady? The feeling that Su Yang could see through her veil became stronger in Xie heart. Only a small gift? Senior Zhong nearly fell unconscious when Su Yang called a technique that could cultivate one's heavenly constitution into a higher grade a mere small gift. In fact, he was so dumbfounded that he missed the obvious flirting that was happening right in front of his wide eyes. Are you sure? Surely, something this precious you must... No need to be so humble, I am also doing this for myself. Come, lean your head towards my way. Although she felt overwhelmed by the sudden development, as though his words were said with magic in it, Xie obediently listened to his words and leaned forward. When she leaned forward, Su Yang also followed. He closed his eyes and gently touched her forehead that was still covered with a veil with his own forehead, not to mention her flowery fragrance that calmed his mind. Xie Xingfang, on the other hand, could feel her face heating up from embarrassment. This was her first time being so close to another man's face with her own. It was close enough that she might accidentally kiss him if she moved forward even the slightest. A few seconds after their foreheads connected, a bright yellow glow could be seen in between their foreheads, slowly growing larger and brighter as time passed, and a few minutes felt like a few hours to Xie Xingfang, who was currently trying to absorb all of the information being fed into her head by Su Yang. Her body began sweating and her breathing quickened. When Senior Zhong saw the changes to Xie Xingfang, he wanted to interrupt them. However, fearing that he might distract them and cause irreversible damages to her, he decided to sit back and bite his jaw with as much strength as he could muster and patiently wait for the two to finish whatever they were doing. Immortal grade tempering technique, 1,000 poisons tempering, she cried inside her heart. When Xie Xingfang finally learned the name and grade of the technique, she was nearly shocked into a coma. There are countless techniques in this world that offer countless varieties of skills and different effects, each divided into different grades and categories depending on the technique's power and versatility. From the weakest and least powerful techniques to the heaven-defying techniques that could destroy mountains, they are ranked mortal grade, earth grade, heaven grade, and lastly the immortal grade, which was considered the highest attainable rarity for techniques in this mortal world. To put in perspective how rare and valuable immortal grade techniques are in this world, one could use the 10 fingers on their 2 hands to count all of the known immortal grade techniques in this world and still have spare fingers to use for counting. Hell, forget about the unobtainable by most immortal grade techniques. Even heaven grade techniques are considered national treasures in powerful sects and are kept secured under strict supervision. Unless one belonged to a great family that ruled an entire region in the eastern continent or some super sect like the Divine Sword sect, they can forget about ever seeing any immortal grade technique up close and personal. When Su Yang finally finished transferring the technique into Xie Xingfang's mind, he slowly pulled his head away from her forehead. I have transferred the technique directly into your mind so you can bring it up and look at it whenever you want. However, keep in mind that you will not be able to share it with anyone no matter how hard you try, so save yourself from pointless sweating, said Su Yang a few moments later. H-A-A-A. H-A-A-A. Xie Xingfang panted heavily, sounding as though she just finished spriting a marathon. This gift, how am I supposed to repay you? Even if I give you everything in my possession, it will not amount to even half the value of this technique. Like I'd said, I am doing this not just for you but also for my own selfish reasons. And you can repay me by successfully cultivating your 100 poisons body into the 1,000 poisons body. Something like that is... Xie Xingfang was speechless. She couldn't understand Su Yang's actions or guess his thoughts no matter how hard she tried. It was as though she was trying to see something deeply shrouded in a thick fog. A genius such as yourself, who is at the Earth spirit realm at such a young age, will surely be successful when cultivating the technique. Su Yang suddenly turned his head to look at the carriage ceiling, and he continued, It seems like I have finally arrived at my destination. Although this meeting was short, it was filled with excitement, even a bit of fate's aura. Xie Xingfang silently stared at Su Yang, seemingly in a daze. Open the carriage door. Senior Zhong suddenly shouted, his voice hasty-sounding, almost as though he wanted Su Yang to leave the carriage as soon as possible. The door to the carriage opened, and Su Yang quickly stepped out of the carriage. Wait. Senior brother Xiao. Xie Xingfang looked like she was about to leave the carriage to follow him but was quickly stopped by Senior Zhong before she could even reach the door. Young lady, His Majesty gave me strict orders to not let you leave this carriage, or else the protection that was bestowed onto it will not be able to protect you from danger. But I still have a lot of things I need to talk to him about, she insisted on leaving the carriage. Young lady, don't forget your standing. Although his swordsmanship is above even mine, he is only a mere commoner from the eastern continent. You cannot involve yourself too deeply with someone like that, or it will bring endless trouble not just to yourself but also that Xiao Yang. If it is as he said, that this meeting was fate, then you will surely meet him again in the future, said Senior Zhong, who did not know what kind of technique Su Yang gave her. Xie Xingfang finally gave up on leaving the carriage to chase after Su Yang after hearing those words. "Start the carriage!" shouted Senior Zhong a few seconds later, and the carriage began moving. Su Yang took one good look at the golden carriage from the outside before turning to face the valley in front of him that had a sky that was covered in thunderclouds from where he stood to the horizons. "This is the Thunder Valley, huh?" Right outside the Thunder Valley before entering the trees that filled the horizon, dozens of people camped outside. Most had injuries on their body, some even with lost limbs. There were disciples from random sects and the rest being mercenaries. Everybody there had one goal, which was to hunt lightning cats for their monster core, valuable and profound resources cultivators use to cultivate themselves. Monster cores are what beasts use to cultivate and store their cultivation base. If a beast with a solid cultivation base died, they would have a chance of leaving behind a monster core with their remaining cultivation base inside that cultivators could use to cultivate themselves. Monster cores could also be used to create powerful weapons that greatly boosts the strength of its wielder, hence its high demand and value. Su Yang casually walked towards the entrance of the Thunder Valley with the sound of lightning strikes constantly roaring in the background. When he reached the camps, the people there started at him with odd gazes. "He's going in there alone? Does he have a death wish? He must be really confident. I will give him 2 hours before he returns with tears in his eyes. I bet you that he won't return, ever." A few individuals there laughed at Su Yang, who was walking into the Thunder Valley without any alert on his face. They have seen too many overconfident individuals enter with similar faces like Su Yang only to return with grave injuries after being here for many days. Inside the Thunder Valley, Su Yang was surrounded by mountains, tall grass, and trees. And besides the random thundering in the background, it was relatively quiet in the area. He walked straight towards the depths for half an hour without stop, yet he has not managed to encounter a single lightning cat. However, Su Yang was already well aware that there were no lightning cats in the outer area of the place before stepping into the Thunder Valley, so he wasn't surprised by their absence. They sure have perfectly cleaned out the outer perimeter, taking even the corpses with them, he wondered as he reached deeper into the valley. As Su Yang got closer to the center, the thundering in the background grew louder and fiercer, like the sound of roaring dragons. Listening to the background, Su Yang couldn't help but recall the time he had spent in the Dragon God Valley, where he would often hear similar sounds in the background. Dragon God Valley. The light in his eyes suddenly flashed a mysterious light. It was one filled with melancholy. Suddenly, the sound of many shrieking resounded in Su Yang's ears. Although it came from somewhere afar, he was able to locate the exact location of where the scream was coming from in an instant. His figure turned into a blur, quickly followed by a sudden gust of wind. Using a foot technique from his previous life that significantly boosted his speed, he arrived at the location within seconds, traveling nearly a mile in that short time. The moment he arrived, he noticed a group of young adults all wearing the same green-colored robes, half of them being on the floor and covered in blood, and surrounding them was 5 lightning cats. These people were mostly disciples from some sect. The lightning cats had black fur and blue eyes, and they are about as big as an adult walking on their 4 limbs. Their black fur also constantly flickered with electricity, looking as though they were all covered in an armor made of lightning. When Su Yang suddenly showed up, the lightning cats and the disciples there looked at him. The disciples looked at him with desperation in their gaze, hoping that he could help them escape this situation. For the lightning cats, they stared at him with wariness and alert. Although they couldn't see his cultivation base, their beastly instincts warned them that Su Yang's presence was definitely the strongest there and that he wasn't someone to be taken lightly. When the trembling disciples there noticed the lightning cats became defensive upon Su Yang's arrival, their eyes glimmered with hope. Su Yang retrieved the mission scroll he had received from the sect and confirmed that it did not mention how many he needed to kill before completing the mission. Although they are only at the elementary spirit realm, their monster cores should fetch some decent wealth if I sold them to some rich families. Su Yang unsheathed the sword by his side as he pondered about his need for money in this world. Although his knowledge and experience were as vast as the sea, his pockets were pitifully empty. And other than the 10 gold coins he had traded with his premium points, he really has nothing noteworthy in his possession. I am extremely poor in this life, to the point where I would not be able to afford anything that could help me at my current level of cultivation. In the midst of Su Yang's thoughts, the 5 lightning cats suddenly pounced at him simultaneously with the lightning element on their body glowing brightly, causing dozens of tiny snake-like white lines to fly at him like a lightning storm. Su Yang's eyes flickered with a profound light, and his legs suddenly blurred, turning nearly invisible. 9 astral steps. Su Yang used one of the best movement techniques he had learned in his previous life. And although he could only utilize a very tiny portion of the technique's full potential due to his insufficient cultivation base, his speed had become so fast that neither the disciples or the lightning cats could react to. He suddenly disappeared from where he stood, and with speed quicker than anyone there could blink, he appeared behind the lightning cats like a ghost. In that instant when he appeared, his arm that held the steel sword danced elegantly and sharply, executing 5 consecutive casual strikes without any technique. Blood sprayed and heads flew. The 5 lightning cats dropped to the ground without any of their heads attached. They had been killed by Su Yang before the dazed disciples could even realize what had happened. After killing the 5 lightning cats in the blink of an eye and ignoring the baffled disciples there, Su Yang used his sword to cut open the forehead of the 2 lightning cats' head to retrieve the monster core hidden inside. 2 monster cores already. Su Yang nodded to himself with satisfaction and threw the monster cores into his pockets. And just as he was able to turn and leave, one of the disciples there called out to him. "Excuse me, Savior. Although it may be too much to ask after you saved our lives, would you like to group up with us?" Su Yang turned to look at the pretty girl who had called for him, who was also giving him a seductive look. After a glance at her low cultivation base that was merely at the 4th level at the elementary spirit realm, he replied in a nonchalant voice, "Hunting beasts at the peak of elementary spirit realm while you are not even qualified to step inside this Thunder Valley? What did you expect to achieve here with your cultivation base? I do not have the time to play with you or your stupid games." Su Yang turned around and left after refusing to carry dead weights, his silhouette quickly disappearing from their eyes, and the pretty lady stared at the direction where he disappeared with a dumbfounded expression, her face red from embarrassment after listening to his harsh words. Tip. As Su Yang traveled deeper into the Thunder Valley, fights between lightning cats and people became more common. None of these have a monster core. Su Yang scanned the surroundings for lightning cats that had monster cores. Normally, one would not know if the beast they killed would have a monster core in them unless they split open its forehead. However, as for Su Yang, who has knowledge and techniques used by immortals and gods, he has the ability to determine whether or not the beast would have a monster core without killing it. Oh, there's one. Once Su Yang manages to find a lightning cat that was guaranteed to leave a monster core behind, he would disappear towards that direction to hunt that lightning cat, even if it was already fighting with other people. Hey! Who the fuck are you? How dare you steal our prey? Your mother? Do you have no shame? People that were fighting with the lightning cat became enraged when Su Yang suddenly appeared out of thin air and stole their kill, even obtaining a monster core out of it. Su Yang only glanced at them and said in a sneering tone, "Did you really expect others to stand around and watch when there are unclaimed wealth in front of their eyes? This is the wilderness, not your backyard, and I am here to earn my wealth just like everyone else. I did not come here to stand around while everyone takes their time with these beasts." In the upper realm of the cultivation world, where immortals and gods lacked the resources to improve themselves, Su Yang has witnessed and experienced for himself the fierce competitions for resources between these immortals and gods. The higher cultivation cultivators achieve, the more valuable the cultivation resource they would need to strengthen themselves due to their growing standard and hunger. Hence to Su Yang, who was adapted to such struggles, he did not consider his actions as being shameless or stealing. "Do not take this personally, this is the reality of the real cultivation world," he said to them before leaving like a ghost. That's right. In the ancient eyes of Su Yang, who has for many times fought to the death with immortals just for the chance to increase his own cultivation slightly, this mortal world has yet to experience the real cultivation world. There was no genuine struggles or fierce competition between cultivators, as there are plenty of resources in this world for the majority to share. What the fuck? Identify yourself. Do you have any idea which sect we belong to? A group of disciples stared at Su Yang with angry expressions after he appeared out of nowhere and stole their prey, even reaping their reward. Su Yang glanced at the group of disciples he stole the lightning cat from and shrugged. I don't know, nor do I care, he said to them and disappeared to another location. Within hours, Su Yang traversed the entire inner area of the Thunder Valley like a gust of wind. And wherever he would appear, another monster core would enter his pocket, followed by enraged reactions from those he stole the kill from. Fuck. That shameless bastard. I swear that if I ever see him again, I will beat him into a plump. But, as shameless as he was, he managed to kill the lightning cats with seemingly zero effort. Are you sure that you want to fight someone like him? Shut up. Very quickly, Su Yang became famous within the Thunder Valley as a shameless thief who would steal the praise of others. The results are better than I'd expected, Su Yang said as he felt his pockets that were filled with monster cores. He was pleasantly surprised to find so many lightning cats running around in this Thunder Valley. It was as though the only beast that lived in this place was lightning cats. Normally, wildernesses like this Thunder Valley would have many different types of beasts dwelling within. However, from Su Yang's encounters, there were only lightning cats. What an odd phenomenon. Su Yang stopped his movements and began pondering. Through a few moments of thinking, he suddenly started running even deeper into the Thunder Valley, even ignoring the surrounding lightning cats with monster cores. However, right before Su Yang reached the center of the Thunder Valley, the Thunder Core, he was greeted by a massive crowd of people blocking his path. These people were all wearing a pair of white robes with a picture of a golden sword sewed on their right leg, and there was at least 100 of these people standing around. What is going on here? Su Yang asked one of them. This place is currently occupied by the Divine Sword Sect. Turn around and leave right this instant. When Su Yang heard that they belonged to the Divine Sword Sect, he couldn't help but lift his eyebrows in surprise. Senior Zhong was clearly heading to another place when he departed with him, so what are these guys doing here in the middle of the Thunder Valley? The majority of them was at the profound spirit realm except for a few individuals that were at the true spirit realm. It was an enormous force to be reckoned with, especially at this Thunder Valley where the majority of beasts were at the elementary spirit realm. It was an overkill. However, with so many profound spirit realms experts, the overwhelming amount of lightning cats should have been eradicated by now, yet there were still many roaming around, which meant that they were not here for the lightning cats but something else. If they are not here for the lightning cats, then it must be because of that. Su Yang smiled to himself. When the Divine Sword Sect disciple saw his smile, he frowned. What the hell are you smiling about? Get lost, he said in a low and irritated voice. Get lost, huh? Su Yang casually retrieved a yellow jade slip from his robe and showed it to the disciple, who suddenly shrieked in terror after seeing the jade slip, causing everybody there to look at them. My deepest apologies. The disciple suddenly dropped to his knees and began kowtowing to Su Yang with a pale face. This unworthy junior have eyes but has failed to recognize Mount Tai. Place suddenly became dead silent, to the point where even a falling leaf could be heard. Through Su Yang showed the Divine Sword Sect the yellow jade slip Senior Zhong had given him earlier. Everything went silent. Move aside, I have business with your seniors, Su Yang said as he put on a profound and oppressive air, making others believe that he was a profound senior. Right away. The disciples quickly cleared a path for Su Yang to walk through. Su Yang nodded and began walking through the open path, and the disciples looked at the ground as he walked past them, seemingly afraid to look at him. Once he got past the crowd, Su Yang continued to walk towards the center, the atmosphere growing heavier as he got closer. Who's there? A voice thundered the moment Su Yang reached the center of the Thunder Valley, the Thunder Core. Su Yang looked at the situation ahead of him, There were 4 figures, each emitting the aura of an expert at the earth spirit realm, standing around a small flower that was glowing a dark blue light in a breathing pattern. This flower was the size of a human thumb, and electricity could be seen coiling around its stem like a small snake. When Su-yang first saw the flower, he showed a slight smile that went away an instant later. "I will not ask you again. How did you get past my disciples and what happened to them?" asked one of the 4 figures, an old lady in red robes with killing intent in her gaze. However, she was not the only one looking at him with hostility, as the 3 figures beside her also looked prepared to attack him at any given moment. These 4 figures knew very well that the Divine Sword Sect's disciples would not let anyone through under any circumstances, unless their hands were forced. However, who in this small eastern continent could possibly force over 100 disciples from the Divine Sword Sect to retreat? This was also why the 4 figures didn't immediately attack Su-yang. They were all wary of his mysterious presence. I walked past them, of course. As for their safety, I did not touch anyone, Su-yang said in a nonchalant voice, seemingly unfazed by the combined killing intent of 4 Earth Spirit Realm cultivators. "You walked past them? How is that even possible? I gave them strict orders to not let anyone through. Can you still say that after seeing this?" Su-yang revealed the yellow jade slip again. Although he did not know the jade slip's purpose when he first obtained it, the reactions from the Divine Sword Sect's disciples made it clear to him that it granted him some sort of special presence within the Divine Sword Sect. And sure enough, when the 4 figures saw the yellow jade slip, their eyes nearly popped out from shock. "Impossible. That's Senior Zhong's command medallion. Why does he have such a thing? How did you obtain that jade slip, and what is your relationship with Senior Zhong? How do we know that it's the real thing?" Senior Zhong had left the sect to go to that place since 10 years ago. The 4 figures began throwing questions at Su-yang, who calmly answered them one by one. "I met Senior Zhong by chance, and after helping him protect Lady Xie, we became best friends and he gave me this jade slip as a show of gratitude." When Su-yang mentioned the surname Xie, the expressions on these 4 figures changed. They no longer looked at him with killing intent, but they still held their suspicions. "As for the authenticity of this jade slip, why don't you check it yourself?" Su-yang then threw the jade slip towards their direction. The one who caught it took a moment to examine the jade slip. Moments later, he cried out, "It's real! This is really Senior Zhong's command medallion. So what if it's real? What are you doing here? Senior Zhong shouldn't know of this operation since he hasn't been with us for over 10 years. The old lady in red robes continued to question him. "Are you sure about that? I parted with Senior Zhong only recently at the entrance of this Thunder Valley." "What? Senior Zhong was here?" Su-yang nodded and said, "Along with Lady Xie." He then approached them in a casual manner and continued, "Do you have any idea what that flower is?" he asked them. The 4 looked at the flower and then back to Su-yang and shook their heads. Indeed, they have never seen such a flower before. Despite their profound knowledge, none of them have ever seen or heard of such a flower before. However, they were certain that this flower was the cause of the phenomenon with the lightning cats in this Thunder Valley and that it was some sort of priceless treasure. Hence why they plan to have this place secured until they figure out the identity of this small flower. That flower is called the extreme Yin flower, and it has the same effects as the pure Yin flower, as well as being 10 times greater in its effectiveness. 10 times greater? When the 4 figures learned about the identity of this flower, their jaws dropped from shock. Pure Yin flower was already considered an extremely strong medicine that could kill even Earth Spirit Realm cultivators. Yet this extreme Yin flower was 10 times stronger? Then wouldn't this extreme Yin flower kill even Heavenly Spirit Realm cultivators? If consumed without a special technique, even cultivators above the Heavenly Spirit Realm would die instantly after using it, said Su-yang, increasing the shock in their hearts. Even those above the Heavenly Spirit Realm? Then what are we supposed to do with this thing? If nobody in this world could use it, then wouldn't that make it useless? Asked the old lady in red robes. "That is why Lady Xie and Senior Zhong had sent me to this place," he replied. Although none of us here could use this extreme Yin flower, I'm fairly certain that Lady Xie's family would find some use in it. Despite knowing nothing about Xie Xingfang's background, Su Yang knew that she was someone with an incomprehensible status in this world, so he used that to his advantage in hopes to convince these four figures. That does make sense. If someone has the ability to handle this extreme Yin flower, then it would be Lady Xie's family. Then, if you will excuse me, I will extract this extreme Yin flower and return to Lady Xie's side, said Su Yang as he stood in front of the extreme Yin flower. Let me see your jade box, said Su Yang without needing to ask if they had one. Here you go. The old lady in red robes retrieved a red box and handed it to Su Yang, who was kneeling in front of the blue flower. The jade box in his hands was similar to the one the white pearl treasury handed him his pure yang flower in. When herbs or medicine with profound qi are uprooted from where they grew, their quality would degrade as time goes, so cultivators would use these jade boxes for storage to slow down the decaying process. The more expensive jade boxes could even perfectly preserve medicines and allow their quality to remain the same even after hundreds of years. Although I was doubtful at first, this is indeed the extreme Yin flower. They normally grow in the coldest of cold places, yet one managed to appear in this Thunder Valley. Su Yang pondered as he casually reached for extreme Yin flower, which greatly shocked the four figures watching. These four figures had been trying to figure out a way to pluck this flower since many days ago, however, because the extreme Yin flower would retaliate with its profound qi, none of them had been able to touch it. Sometimes when a herb has enough profound qi, it could give birth to its own conscious. Albeit rather little, this extreme Yin flower has enough awareness to protect itself when it senses danger. Wait, that's... However, just as the four figures expected to witness the extreme Yin flower attack Su Yang with profound qi, Su Yang casually plucked the flower as though he was plucking a normal flower. It was effortless and smooth. Extreme Yin flowers emits this profound aura that will easily chase away all beasts, leaving only beasts with a naturally strong Yin body like the lightning cats to nourish itself. This Thunder Valley should return to normal within a few weeks. Su Yang explained to them why the Thunder Valley only has lightning cats as he placed the extreme Yin flower inside the jade box. How? How did you pluck it without it attacking you? When we tried, it would shoot out profound qi equivalent to a cultivator at the heavenly spirit realm, asked one of the four figures with a baffled expression on his face. Su Yang looked at them with a calm expression and said, It is the same as courting a girl. If she doesn't like you, then she will obviously shoo you away. However, if you approach her properly, then she will obediently follow you home. Su Yang's explanation nearly caused the four to choke on air from the sheer ridiculousness. How could he compare plucking a divine medicine to courting girls? However, as crazy as his words sounded, it sounded sane when it came out of his mouth. Perhaps it was his handsome face or his graceful appearance, but the four did not continue to question him. Very well. Now I will deliver this to Lady Xie. Wait a moment. Just as Su Yang began to walk away, one of the four stopped him. I will be sure to mention your divine sword sect when I pass this to Lady Xie, Su Yang suddenly said without even turning around. Thank you, Senior. Although dumbfounded at first, the one who called for him bowed to his disappearing back with respect, and the other three soon followed. Although Su Yang looked young enough to be their grandchildren, there was a certain feeling he was emitting that made him feel more ancient than his actual appearance, which made the four feel as though they were in the presence of some profound expert. Lady Xie's family is profound and unfathomably deep. To think they have an expert who could pluck divine medicines with a heavenly spirit realm cultivation base as though he was plucking weed. The four sighed with reverence as Su Yang disappeared from the Thunder Core. Senior. When the Divine Sword Sect's disciples noticed Su Yang's figure appearing from behind the tree leans, they all cleared the way for him without saying a single word. I have heard good things about the Divine Sword Sect from Senior Zhong, but I thought he was only patting himself in the back. I'm sure Senior Zhong will be exhilarated once I mention to him how respectful his disciples are. Su Yang laughed as he walked the clear path. His words caused the disciples there to feel elevated. Senior Zhong was a figure with an extensive background within the sect and was hailed basically as a hero. To have their presence mentioned in front of such a hero was something to be proud of. However, little did these disciples know that if Senior Zhong really found out what Su Yang did today with his command Jade Slip, he would surely puke blood due to anger. While Su Yang was not the type to hold grudges, if he has the chance to return a favor, he will not be humble. After Su Yang left the place, the Divine Sword sect also left soon after, and over 100 figures could be seen standing on swords while soaring across the Thunder Valley into the horizon. Flying swords, huh? I should also get myself a flying sword once I sell these monster cores. Su Yang thought to himself as he returned to hunting lightning cats. As for the extreme Een flower that could be considered a divine medicine in this mortal world, he doesn't have a single clue as to how he should use it. As a man, Su Yang couldn't use the extreme Een flower for himself, as he would only be courting death. However, he also has very little hope that he could find a female in this mortal world, where the heavenly spirit realm is considered the apex, to be powerful enough to consume this extreme Een flower without exploding into 1,000 pieces from the tyrannical Een chi within the flower. Even if I give someone at the heavenly spirit realm the method to consume this extreme Een flower, their cultivation base would not be enough to fully resist it. Ayoa! To think I'd be fortunate enough to come across this extreme Een flower in this lacking world, yet the chances of finding someone worthy and able to consume it is near non-existent. How unlucky! Truly unfortunate. Inside the medicine hall, Lan Liqing calmly walked down the stairs with her usual nonchalant expression. When the disciples saw her, their face radiated brightly. Master! You are finally out of your room. One of her disciples ran up to her and handed her a jade slip. Master, the patriarch visited yesterday, but he quickly left when we told him that you were in closed cultivation. He also left behind this jade slip for you before leaving, said the disciple as she handed Lan Liqing the jade slip. The patriarch? Lan Liqing wondered what he wanted from her. Thank you, I will head to the Yin Yang Pavilion to see the patriarch now. Lan Liqing suddenly stopped by the exit and turned to ask, By the way, have you heard anything about Su Yang as of lately? The disciples shook their heads. Su Yang left the sect for a mission a week ago and we haven't heard anything about him since then. He left the sect? Lan Liqing has been cultivating alone in her room ever since Su Yang plucked her flower, so it wasn't weird that she didn't know about it. After leaving the medicine hall, Lan Liqing went directly to the Yin Yang Pavilion, where the current patriarch and matriarch lived. Unlike normal sects, the Profound Blossom sect had 2 sect masters instead of one male and 1 female. This way, if any of the males or females had a problem with each other, they would have their own representative without being afraid of being treated unjustly simply because of their gender. Disciple Lan greets the patriarch. Lan Liqing bowed to the handsome middle-aged man with long black hair, who was calmly sat on his bed before her. While she was a sect elder, she was also considered a disciple of the sect, and under the sect master's presence, all elders are still disciples. Relax. The patriarch casually waved his hand and continued. Do you know why I called you here? He asked. No, this disciple doesn't know. It has been over 25 years since you joined the Profound Blossom sect as a disciple, all the way back when I was a mere elder, and as far as I am aware, you are the only elder within the sect that has yet to truly experience dual cultivation. Patriarch then sighed. You were an excellent disciple with a bright future when you first joined and everybody was charmed by your appearances, but because of your stubbornness that refused to dual cultivate, your talents never really sprouted. Although the sect does not force the disciples to dual cultivate against their will, you are now over 40 years old, yet you are still a pure maiden. Tell me, Disciple Lan, for what reason did you join the Profound Blossom sect when you do not wish to dual cultivate? He continued with an expression of pity. When Lan Liqing was still in her prime years, she was one of the most promising disciples within the Profound Blossom sect with superior looks and great talent that captivated countless disciples. Her charm was so great that it had even caught the attention of a few core disciples. However, despite so many people courting her, Lan Liqing coldly refused to cultivate with anyone, even the core disciples, which had caused the previous sect masters endless headaches. The previous sect masters may have allowed you to do whatever you wanted because of their kindness, but I am not as lenient as them. Disciple Lan, you are a disciple of the Profound Blossom sect, so you have an obligation to follow its teachings and dual cultivate. Lan Liqing, who had been standing there silently, finally opened her mouth and said, "What if I refuse?" "Then you will either be forced to cultivate or forced to leave the sect," said the patriarch in a cold tone. "But it would be a waste to throw you away after spending so much resource on you, especially when you still have your Yin essence. The sect rules forbids forced dual cultivation, even if it is ordered by the patriarch," Lan Liqing calmly replied without revealing the fact that her Yin essence was already stolen by a mere disciple, as she has been through many similar situations. "You are right, but being a disciple of my Profound Blossom sect, you are obligated to serve me, as that is one of the many privileges being the sect master," said the patriarch. His narrowed gaze filled with lust as he scanned Lan Liqing's refined figure. Lan Liqing frowned at his words. He was right. As long as she was a disciple of the Profound Blossom sect, she was obligated to serve the sect master if demanded. However, out of respect for the previous sect master who doted you as if you were his own grandchild, I will give you one last chance. You have until the end of the month to find yourself a partner among the current elders before I call you to my room again, and it will not end with just a few words like today. Do not force my hands, disciple Lan. Lan Liqing left the Yin-Yang pavilion immediately after the patriarch's last words. When she returned to the medicine hall, her complexion was pale, causing the disciples there to look at her with worry. "Master, are you all right? You look awful." "I am fine. I just need to rest in my room for a bit." The disciples there silently watched as Lan Liqing slowly walked upstairs, looking as though she was in despair. What happened to her? Did she get scolded at by the patriarch? Probably. Lan Liqing was a disciple at this Profound Blossom sect only because of the previous patriarch, who brought her in and raised her as his own after he saved her moments before being kidnapped by bandits that had brutally killed her parents. If she wasn't attached to this Profound Blossom sect that she saw as her home, she would have long left the place when the previous patriarch died. Inside her room, Lan Liqing silently sat on her bed, her muddled gaze staring at a small piece of cloth in her hands that was stained by a few blood spots. "Su Yang," she mumbled, feeling perplexed by the situation. After conning the divine sword sect the extreme Yin flower by acting like someone that worked for Lady Xie, Su Yang continued to travel the Thunder Valley hunting lightning cats for their monster core. And because of a profound technique he'd learned in his previous life, he was able to easily distinguish those with monster cores from those that don't. Su Yang casually sliced the lightning cat's forehead with the tip of his sword and removed the pebble-sized monster core that was inside, and he threw it into his pockets that were already filled with monster cores. "I really need a storage ring. All this weight on my body feels weird and uncomfortable," mumbled Su Yang, who was used to having all his valuables in storage rings. Storage rings are magical rings with a space of its own inside, like a pocket dimension that allows its owners to store things within, making it easier for them to walk around while carrying things that would normally require effort. Cultivators would normally store their all treasures within their storage rings, as they are easily accessible when needed and are always safe by their side. All-seeing celestial eyes. Su Yang's eyes suddenly flickered with a profound light that quickly disappeared. So this was the last one that had a monster core, huh? Su Yang gently patted his bulging pockets that contained more than a dozen monster cores. It felt as though he was carrying many rocks in both sides of his pockets, making it quite uncomfortable for him, as it would rub on his legs whenever he moved. Although I made this trip from pure coincidences, I managed to obtain quite a decent amount of wealth. An extreme Yin flower and a bunch of monster cores of the Yin lightning element, all that would benefit females but harm males. Su Yang sighed. In this world there exists a version of either Yin or Yang in almost everything, even in elements such as fire, water, wind, and earth. Hence why there are Yin lightning elements and Yang lightning elements. After clearing out the Thunder Valley, Su Yang did not wait for another second to leave the place, as he did not wish to stay there any longer. When he walked out from the Thunder Valley, the people camping outside that recognized him from a few hours back stared at him with wide eyes. Not only did he return with all his limbs attached, he even managed to come out unscathed. As Su Yang walked away, he glanced at those few individuals that were loudly sneering at him before and showed them a slight smile alongside an expression filled with mockery, causing the veins in their head to bulge like roots. They wanted to pounce at him at that moment, but because they were all heavily injured while Su Yang was in a perfect condition, none of them dared to approach him. After leaving the Thunder Valley, Su Yang traveled back to the Swift Feather City. And although it had taken him nearly a week to travel to the Thunder Valley from the Swift Feather City, he was able to return to the Swift Feather City within the same day he left the Thunder Valley because he decided to run at full speed instead of walking at a strolling pace like he did last time. Once he reached the main gates, the guards allowed him inside without any trouble once they saw the elegant white robes on him that identified him as a disciple of the Profound Blossom sect. "Please enjoy your stay, young master." They bowed to him as he entered. And unlike his first visit, Su Yang walked a straight line through the middle of the city without stopping his legs, as he had no reason to linger around in this place. However, when he reached the center of the city, he suddenly stopped his steps to look at a massive group of people trying to enter the large red building in front of them. They were all dressed in wealthy attires with expensive accessories all around their body, looking as though they were on their way to some party for nobles. There was also a few individuals within that group that looked like disciples of certain sects, but they were in the minority and was barely noticeable. "What is that place?" Su Yang stopped a random pedestrian and asked. "The Burning Lotus Auction House? It's an elite auction house that opens only once a year. It's for those who are wealthy and are looking to buy or sell rare treasures," said the pedestrian. "An auction house, huh?" Su Yang looked at his bulging pockets and nodded, looking as though he had decided on something. "Thank you," he said before approaching the crowd. Once he reached the crowd, Su Yang focused his ears to listen to the people around him talking. "Noble Chen, what are you trying to buy from the auction house this year? Are you looking to fight me again this year? If so, then you can screw off." "Haha, don't be like that, Noble Chen. If it wasn't for my son who really needed that 70-year-old ginseng, I wouldn't have fought you for it. Because of you, my son nearly destroyed the house out of anger because he wasn't able to break through without that 70-year-old ginseng. I have heard rumors that the Burning Lotus Auction House might be auctioning a few of their famous handmade pills this year. The Burning Lotus Pill. That profound pill that increases the chance of someone entering the profound spirit realm by 90%? Really? If they are really selling Burning Lotus pills this year, then I must get my hands on one. My son, who is at the peak of the elementary spirit realm, will finally reach the profound spirit realm if he had its assistance. I can't wait to see Madame Wang again. Are you here to look at girls or treasures? Aren't they the same thing? Eh? Noble Chen, you are also here for the low-grade storage ring. What? Don't tell me that you are also here for that? Well, haha. Good. Today will be a good day for revenge. Upon hearing that this place would be auctioning a storage ring, Su Yang decided to stay around to see if he could earn enough from the monster cores to buy it. After standing around for some time outside while people slowly entered the Burning Lotus auction house, it was finally Su Yang's turn to head inside. When he approached the door, a beautiful young lady wearing a red cheongsam stopped him and asked, "Excuse me, are you selling or buying today? I would like to sell a few elementary grade and profound grade lightning cat monster cores," he replied while patting his pockets. The young lady's eyes widened with astonishment when she saw how he was carrying so many monster cores in his pockets as though they were candies, making her wonder why he'd carry them like that and how many were in his pockets. "How many monster cores are you trying to sell today?" she asked him with a stiff smile. "I have 36 of them," replied Su Yang in an indifferent voice. 36 of them? The young lady nearly fell on her butt cheeks when she heard the amount of monster cores he was carrying. How did he manage to obtain so many of them? Despite their over 100 years of business, not even their Burning Lotus auction house has ever sold so many monster cores at once before. "Esteemed guest, please wait a moment," said the young lady in a hurried voice. She then beckoned one of the assistants inside the building to go to her. Bring this esteemed guest to the guest room and notify Madame Wang of his presence. Tell her that he has 3 dozens of lightning cat monster cores that he'd like us to sell for him. The young lady whispered directly in the assistant's ear, who was also a pretty young lady wearing similar clothing. Since Madame Wang would only meet with guests that have extremely rare and valuable items to sell, or when they have a profound background, the assistant instantly became alert of Su Yang's presence. The assistant glanced at Su Yang's handsome face and blushed. Such a good-looking young man, he must surely be someone with an exalted background. Please follow me, esteemed guest. The assistant gracefully beckoned him to enter. When the other guests saw how the servants from the Burning Lotus auction house treated Su Yang with such respect, they all intensively looked at him, looking as though they were trying to engrave his face into their memories. After Su Yang entered the building, he was led to a large room with expensive furniture. Esteemed guest, please wait a moment while I call for Madame Wang, said the assistant before walking away in a fast pace. While the assistant went to call for this Madame Wang, Su Yang retrieved the 36 monster cores from his pockets and laid them on the table made from exquisite wood in front of him, all in an orderly fashion and separated by their grades and quality. Monster cores are graded by the cultivation base of its owner before death. When a beast at the elementary spirit realm dies, it would normally leave behind an elementary grade monster core, whilst a profound spirit realm beast would leave behind a profound grade monster core. However, not all beasts drop monster cores with grades similar to their cultivation base, as there are times they would leave behind monster cores with a lower grade than their actual cultivation base. Monster cores are also graded by its size, so small-sized monster core are considered inferior in quality while the larger ones are of superior quality, such as inferior elementary grade monster cores and superior elementary grade monster cores. There are also higher qualities than superior, but those are usually only available from profound beasts above the heavenly spirit realm. A few minutes after Su Yang finished organizing the monster cores, the door to the room slowly opened, and an extremely beautiful woman wearing a revealing black cheongsam entered the room. Su Yang glanced at the woman who just entered. She had short black hair with a small red lotus hair accessory in her hair. Her eyes were sharp and clear, and her naturally seductive figure was undoubtedly alluring enough to halt the steps of any man in the streets that looked at her. When this beautiful woman saw the amount of monster cores laid out on the table, her eyes flickered with an excited light. However, when she noticed Su Yang in his robes, her eyebrows unconsciously raised itself, and a glint of delight flickered in her eyes. To be honest, when I heard that someone wanted to sell lightning cat monster cores at our Burning Lotus auction house, I did not expect that someone to be a mere outer court disciple from the infamous Profound Blossom sect. She sat down in front of Su Yang and said to him in a calm voice, "This many lightning cat monster cores, did you personally slay them or did you obtain them from another source?" Madame Wang continued to speak as she picked up one of the monster cores to play with it without giving Su Yang any space in her view. Seeing Madame Wang's arrogant demeanor and lack of manners, Su Yang smiled and said, "I like doing business with honest people like you, as it makes the transaction much more straightforward and less complicated. So, what is the share like for doing business in your Burning Lotus auction house?" Madame Wang's eyes widened with surprise when Su Yang outright ignored her questions while asking his own. Who does this brat think he is talking to? Does he even know where he is? Is this how you speak to your seniors? She stared at him with a frown. Don't even bother trying to use your status to take advantage of me, surnamed Wang. Su Yang suddenly leaned forward with a serious expression on his face, his sharp gaze staring directly into Madame Wang's eyes. If you are trying to act your age by looking at me as a mere junior, then I will also act my actual age. Who are you? How dare you speak to me in such a tone? Do you know who I am? I am a sect elder from the Burning Lotus. When Madame Wang, a cultivator at the peak of the true spirit realm, sensed the overwhelming aura emitted by Su Yang that gave her the feeling that she was in the presence of an experienced senior, her heart skipped a beat. Even if you are the sect master of my sect, if you talk to me in a distasteful tone, I will make you change that tone. Su Yang rudely interrupted her in a calm voice, which sounded more oppressive than being loud. Although Su Yang has the appearance of a young man, he was still mentally older than anybody living in this world. He was an existence who was revered no matter where he traveled. Even if nobody in this world was aware of his exalted existence, he would not allow anyone to disrespect him in such a fashion. Now let's put a halt to this silliness so we can start doing business. How does that sound? He said with a smile. Madame Wang sat there with a dazed expression, her trembling gaze filled with disbelief and bewilderment as she stared at Su Yang, who was calmly sitting there with a slight smile on his face. She was a sect elder of one of the few prestigious sects within this eastern continent, the Burning Lotus Palace, yet a mere junior from the indecent Profound Blossom sect actually dared to speak to her with such arrogance and disrespect? She had never faced such a situation before, hence her perplexion. However, as much as she wanted to flip the table and slap Su Yang in the face, there was something in her that silently told her to calm down and not act so recklessly, so she closed her eyes and took a deep breath to recollect herself. She didn't want to admit defeat, much less to a junior, but the 3 dozens of monster cores on the table greatly helped her calm down. While they were only elementary grade and profound grade monster cores, they are still considered very valuable resources, as they are always in high demand and could never seem to satisfy the never-ending flow of orders. Customers who wish to sell at our Burning Lotus sect will receive 70% of the total amount for the items sold, while the Burning Lotus auction house takes the remaining 30%. If it doesn't sell, then you will pay us 10 gold coins for using our service, said Madame Wang with an annoyed voice. I want 80%, Su Yang said immediately after. Madame Wang instantly frowned at his words. Are you purposefully trying to anger me? Don't forget you're standing here as the customer. This is not a negotiation. You either take it or leave it. Of course, this is not a negotiation. This is my offer, you either take it or leave it. Get out, before I assault a guest inside this place for the first time ever since I became the manager here, said Madame Wang with clenched fists, her gaze narrowed in a threatening way. However, Su Yang remained sitting there and he said, Are you sure about that? You won't be seeing any more lightning cat monster cores being sold for at least a few more years after these. Madame Wang's frown immediately deepened. What did he mean by that? Although lightning cat monster cores are indeed rare and hard to come by, they are not as rare as Su Yang made them sound. You seem confused. Are you aware of the situation at the Thunder Valley? Su Yang suddenly asked. The Thunder Valley? Madame Wang recalled how there has been an abnormally large amount of lightning cats appearing within the Thunder Valley for the past week. It was to the point where there was only lightning cats and nothing else, almost as though everything else that had lived there had suddenly vanished or driven away. Because of the subjugation happening there even as we are currently speaking, the lightning cat's population there will evidently plummet. They might even get hunted to the point of extinction. What do you think will happen once that happens? Madame Wang's eyes widened upon realizing where Su Yang was trying to get at. However, before she could even open her mouth to speak, Su Yang continued. The monster cores you see on the table are the only lightning cat monster cores left. There are no more within the Thunder Valley, so I want to sell them at 3 times its original price. Humph. How can you be so sure about that? Whether I am right or not, you will know in a few months. So here is my offer. You can help me sell these monster cores now and jump in joy later, or you can force me out that door today and regret your decision within a few months' time. Either way, even if I don't sell them here today, I will still have many other uses for these monster cores. Madame Wang became silent. She was pondering his offer. If what he says about the lightning cats is true and I let him leave now, then we will lose out on a potentially massive profit. However, if we help him sell his monster cores for 3 times its original price without any solid proof regarding his claims, then it will upset the guests and our Burning Lotus auction house will definitely lower in reputation. No. We can just tell the guests that the seller insisted on selling it 3 times the original price no matter what. Even if it doesn't sell, we will not lose anything because we didn't spend any resources on it, even profiting from it. After thinking to herself the situation, Madame Wang finally decided to help Su Yang sell his monster cores. If it sells, then even if they have to lose 10% of their normal shares, they would still profit because the monster cores would be sold at least 3 times its original price. I will let you know right now that I do not like you and that my decision was made purely thinking from my Burning Lotus auction house. Business is business, so I will help you sell your monster cores. Su Yang nodded with a smile and said, Good, now let's move on to my second offer. Ha! Madame Wang looked at him with a dumbfounded expression on her face, looking as though she couldn't understand his words just now. She wondered what else did he has to offer. I happen to hear that your Burning Lotus auction house has the recipe for this pill that increases the chance of someone entering the profound spirit realm by 90%. My second offer is this. I have a method to make that pathetic 90% into 100%, and I am willing to sell it to you. You can what? Madame Wang directly cried out loud from the shock of hearing his abrupt offer. Even though it was only a mere 10%, the difference between 90% and 100% is incomparable because one guaranteed success and the other didn't. Hell, forget about 90%. Even if it was turning 99% into 100%, she would still be as shocked. You are an expert in the Tao of alchemy, an alchemist? Madame Wang asked Su Yang, her voice sounding dazed and her face still expressing strong disbelief. Alchemists or alchemy masters are cultivators in the cultivation world with a profession in medicines and creating pills. They are all highly respected and valued people in the cultivation world because of their ability to create pills that could significantly assist others, whether it be their health or cultivation. However, not everybody can become an alchemist as they wish. Just like cultivation, one must be born with the talent to become an alchemist, as they are required to memorize the countless numbers of plants and medicines that exist in this world. It is said that only 1 in 100,000 people are born with the capabilities to become an alchemist, hence their rarity in this world. Additionally, most alchemists in this world are at an old age because they had to spend the majority of their life studying the Tao of alchemy just to become a full-fledged alchemist. So for Su Yang, who was still so young, to be an alchemist was something almost unbelievable in Madame Wang's eyes. No, I am not an alchemist. Su Yang immediately denied her suspicions, and he continued, But I happen to know a thing or two about the Tao of alchemy, as I used to have a friend who was decent in that field. If you're not an alchemist, then what the hell could you possibly know about the profound Tao of alchemy? Madame Wang frowned. She was someone who deeply revered all alchemists, as she was an alchemy apprentice herself, someone who just started her path to becoming an alchemy master. So when Su Yang, someone who was not even an alchemist, claimed that he knew a thing or two about the Tao of alchemy, it had greatly annoyed her. In her eyes, he was not any different than someone claiming to know about sewing when he'd never sewed before. Whether I know anything or not, why don't you see for yourself? Do you have one of those burning lotus pills on you right now? He suddenly said. What are you going to do? She asked with a doubtful expression. I have never seen this burning lotus pill ever in my life before, but I will be able to guess its recipe if you give me a minute with it. What a joke. If you can tell a pill's recipe just by looking at the pill, then I'd be willing to kiss your feet and call you my master. Madame Wang sneered at his ridiculous claims. Then why don't we have a bet on whether or not I can do it? If I cannot guess the pill's recipe, then I will give you all of these lightning cat's monster cores for free. However, if I win... A profound light flickered within Madame Wang's eyes halfway through Su Yang's sentence, and she quickly interrupted him. If you win, then you can do whatever you want with my body, she said to him with a seductive look. Su Yang lifted an eyebrow at her offer, and he said a second later, Why would I want your body? His words instantly dumbfounded Madame Wang, who was extremely confident in her charming figure and beautiful appearance. How could he refuse her offer that was a dream of countless men out there? Could he even be considered a man at this point? After hearing Su Yang's direct rejection, Madame Wang awkwardly cleared her throat. Then what do you want? She asked with a slightly blushing face, feeling embarrassed about what had just happened. I want you, Su Yang said in a nonchalant voice, dumbfounding her once again. What did you just say? Madame Wang couldn't help but feel that he was truly trying to make a fool out of her by now. Where did he get the courage to ask for her after refusing her just seconds ago? I want you, your status as a sect elder for the Burning Lotus Palace to be precise. I will clearly win this bet, as that's the only reason I'd even bother making this wager in the first place. Did you really think that I'd be stupid enough to make an expensive bet that I wasn't confident in? Or did that not come across your mind at all? How laughable. Su Yang chuckled. Madame Wang's jaw dropped slightly from shock. She'd only realized that after Su Yang mentioned it. Because he had used so many monster cores as his wager, it had caught her off guard and made her mind muddled for a moment. After the realization, her body began feeling hotter than before, almost as if the room's temperature skyrocketed. Just thinking about how she'd almost gave away her body for free made her entire body sweaty. Why are you doing this, me? Do I really look that easy to make fun of? You may be a customer here, but force in my hands and I will kill you. Madame Wang gritted her teeth in anger, and her eyes narrowed at Su Yang, her urge to beat him up resurfacing and stronger than ever. Ever since the beginning, nothing had made sense to her. She felt as though she was being thrown around by Su Yang at the back of his palms, that she was just his plaything. Seeing her cultivation base at the peak of the true spirit realm leaking out of her, Su Yang casually shrugged. You are an honest woman, so I did not bother coding my words with you. I did not intend on making fun of you, I promise. Hearing his words and seeing his sincere face, Madame Wang slowly calmed down. Continue, she said a moment later. Before I continue, allow me to show you my credibility. The burning lotus pill, you have one, right? He said. Madame Wang turned silent again. And a minute later, she stood up and walked to the back of the room, where she retrieved a small glass bottle inside one of the drawers. Inside this glass bottle, there rested one red-colored medicine pill in the shape and size of a perfectly small, round pebble. This is the burning lotus pill. Make any funny movements, and I'll instantly kill you. Madame Wang placed the glass bottle on the table right beside the monster cores. Su Yang casually picked up the bottle and inspected the pill inside. I will open it to smell it. Su Yang smiled when Madame Wang frowned at his words. Don't worry, it will only take a second and the pill's quality will remain the same, he said to her as a reassurance, since these glass bottles were made to keep the pills inside fresh or else they'd degrade, just like jade boxes. After saying that, Su Yang barely pulled the cap off the glass bottle and gave it a quick sniff before closing it immediately. He then placed the glass bottle back on the table and closed his eyes with a pondering expression. This pill was made only recently, precisely 5 days ago. The ingredients used to create this pill was... Su Yang, still with his eyes closed, began naming a dozen different names for herbs and other things, causing Madame Wang to stare at him with her delicious-looking mouth and beautiful eyes wide open. This burning lotus pill is almost the exact same as the profound advancement pill, except it has a few ingredients missing, hence its inferior quality and pathetic 90% chance of success. Su Yang thought to himself as he was naming the recipe to Madame Wang. Profound advancement pill was a common pill in his previous life in all 4 great worlds that had the exact same effect as the burning lotus pill, but instead of 90% of success, they were all known to be effective 100% of the time. However, the way Madame Wang treated the burning lotus pill was as if it were some sort of valuable treasure. This made Su Yang wonder what had happened to the profound advancement pill, or if it still existed in this world. He really managed to guess the recipe just by smelling the scent of the pill? Madame Wang mumbled to herself with a dazed voice, seemingly in a state of great shock. Forget about her limited knowledge, even the alchemy masters in her burning lotus palace would not be able to do what Su Yang just did, not to mention that she has never heard of anybody in the history of alchemy that had managed to achieve similar feats. How about it? Did I guess correctly? Despite knowing that he was right, Su Yang still asked her with a cheeky smile. I... Madame Wang was so shocked that she couldn't even open her mouth to speak properly, so she decided to nod her head instead. After taking a long moment to calm herself down, she asked with a serious expression, How'd you do it? Only a selected few from the Burning Lotus Palace could possibly know the recipe for the Burning Lotus pill, So the chances of you already knowing prior to coming here is right beside zero. I told you that I had a friend who was decent in the Tao of alchemy, right? After being beside that person for many years, even if you don't like alchemy, you'll still learn a thing or two about it, Su Yang said with a smile that carried a feeling of affection. When Madame Wang saw his expression, her heart began throbbing faster. What could he be thinking about that would cause him to make such an expression? Who was this friend of his? Her interests were piqued, but she didn't open her mouth to ask, as that would be an awkward thing to do when they've only met today, not to mention the unpleasant first impression they had of each other. Now that I've shown you a little of what I can do, let us continue our business. The reason the burning lotus pill has a 90% success rate and not a 100% success rate is simple. It is missing a few key ingredients. Su Yang continued. This is my second offer. I will give you the missing ingredients, but you will not share it with anybody, not even to those within your sect. Additionally, you will become mine. But I don't want your body, only your assistance and a few things along with your undivided loyalty. Su Yang believed that making her the sole holder of the recipe would greatly boost her ego and loyalty towards him if she accepted his offer, hence why he did not want her to spread the recipe. And in all honesty, he couldn't care less about a mere pill that was only useful for those at the elementary spirit realm. Also, judging from the faint smell of medicine and herbs in your scent, I can tell that you are studying the Tao of alchemy. If I am pleased with your assistance, then I might even share with you a thing or two about the Tao of alchemy, which will guarantee you great success as an alchemy master. Madame Wang silently stared at Su Yang with wide eyes as he spoke. She didn't know what to think about the situation nor how to react. This is her first time listening to someone who didn't even look half her age talk to her in such a way. Through a moment of silence, Madame Wang suddenly stood up. Unbelievable. You are a really absurd existence. I have never seen or heard of a person like you until today. Do you really think I will agree with your ridiculous offer just because you were able to sniff out the burning lotus pills recipe? She said with a loud voice, causing the air in the room to tremble. A pity. Su Yang shook his head and also stood up. If you do not accept my offer, then you can forget about it and just help me sell my monster cores. Wait a moment. Who said anything about refusing your offer? Madame Wang then cleared her throat and continued with a blushing face. What kind of assistance do you want from me? Despite her annoyance with Su Yang, she was able to see the profit of shaking hands with him. The burning lotus pill was already considered a top-tier pill in the cultivation world with its 90% success chance, so what kind of reaction would the world receive if Su Yang really had the recipe for a 100% success rate pill? It would surely shock the world to its core. It was now Su Yang's turn to be dumbfounded by her words, as he did not expect her to say such a thing right after sounding offended by his offer. It's simple, really. In return for fame and repsect, I just want you to supply me with resources and create a few pills for me using the recipes I will be giving you later, he said a few seconds later. Madame Wang closed her eyes to think. When she opened her eyes again, uncertainty flashed within. It's a captivating offer, really. However, unfortunately for both of us, I am only an alchemy apprentice, so concocting the burning lotus pill is simply impossible for me, let alone whatever you want me to make. And if you don't mind me asking, why did you choose me to assist you despite our unpleasant encounter? If you really need someone to help you concoct your pills, then there are many other better choices out there, she said to him in a dispirited tone, clearly unhappy about her status as an alchemy apprentice. And you are clearly more educated than me in the Tao of alchemy, so why don't you do it yourself? Hearing her question, Su Yang smiled. 'Cause I have more important things to do. And I am not someone to hold grudges, especially not against a beautiful woman such as yourself. I chose you simply because I can see talent in you. What? I am talented. Madame Wang blushed after being called beautiful by Su Yang, which she found quite baffling, as she was long adapted to people complimenting her appearance. Furthermore, she would normally not act so bashful in front of others, yet why is she doing that exact thing right now, much less in front of such a young man? It was as if there was something about Su Yang that made her react differently. Others may be unaware, even you may be unaware, but I can see talent in you when it comes to the Tao of alchemy," he said to her with a mysterious smile, and deep within his gaze flickered a profound light. "As long as you cultivate the technique I give you, you will surely become one of the best alchemy masters in this eastern continent, if not the very best in this world," Su Yang continued. "You plan on giving me a technique? What kind of technique is it?" she asked with extreme curiosity. "It's a technique that will help you understand the Tao of alchemy faster and better. It will aid you in becoming an alchemy master within months, if not weeks. So what about my offer? Are you willing to accept it?" Madame Wang rubbed her temples and began pondering extensively. Everything Su Yang offered her sounded too good to be true, yet something about it gave her a feeling that it was all real. "Just to be clear, if I accept your offer, you will help me become an alchemy master, and in return I will give you resources and help you make pills? That's the gist of it, yes?" Su Yang calmly nodded, confirming her thoughts. After a moment of dead silence, Madame Wang released a long sigh. "To think there'd be a day I would lower myself to the point where I have to rely on a youngster to help me achieve my dreams in becoming an alchemy master." She stared at Su Yang in the eyes and continued, "I, Wang Shuren, accept your offer." Su Yang laughed at her words. "Youngster? Despite my appearance, I am actually older than you, believe it or not. As a cultivator yourself, you should know very well that one's appearance can be very deceiving in our world." Wang Shuren looked at him with wide eyes without feeling too shocked, as she had a feeling that he was actually older than he looked due to his demeanor, but without confirmation, she didn't dare to believe it at first. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door to the room. "Madame Wang, the auction is about to begin," said one of the servants from behind the door. "I will be there in a moment," Wang Shuren loudly replied. "We can continue this after the auction," Su Yang said a moment later. Wang Shuren nodded at his suggestion, and she stored all the monster cores that were on the table inside a large leather pouch. "I will bring this to where the rest of things are being auctioned today first." After cleaning the table, Wang Shuren led Su Yang out of the room, where she proceeded to direct a beautiful lady to bring Su Yang to one of the VIP guest rooms and to serve him for the day. The VIP guest room was a single large square room with a few furniture along with a luxurious chair seated a few steps behind the large glass wall that showcased the entire view of the auction room, where the auction will be taken place. When taken to this room, the beautiful lady appointed to him said, "Esteemed guest, if you see something you wish to make an offer on, just say it out loud and your voice will be broadcasted into the auction room for everybody to hear. Additionally, your privacy when inside this room is a top priority, so your voice will be disguised and the glass wall can only be seen through from your end." "How thoughtful," Su Yang smiled. "If esteemed guest requires any assistance at any time during the auction, you can call for me, as I will be standing here by the door until the end of the auction. Any kind of service is fine?" Su Yang said with an enchanting and seductive smile, dumbfounding the beautiful lady for a good second. "Yes, anything is fine as long as it is with the esteemed guest," she said a moment later, her face quickly reddening. Naturally, the Burning Lotus auction house did not provide that kind of service, not even to its esteemed guests. But seeing how handsome and noble Su Yang was, the young lady willingly lied about her services, as she could only see benefits from this situation. After all, what kind of servant wouldn't want to create a close connect with an esteemed guest as handsome as Su Yang to earn a few favors? Even if he wasn't an esteemed guest, the young lady was positive that she would still willingly serve him. After a moment of silence, Su Yang suddenly laughed out loud. "Ha ha! I am joking with you." It was a habit of his to tease others, especially young maidens. Hearing that it was only a joke, the young lady felt her face flushing from embarrassment, yet there was also a hint of disappointment in her heart, as she was expecting this year's auction to be a bit different and more exciting. "Shem? Don't tell me you actually looked forward to serving some stranger you've just only met? Even though you are a pure maiden?" Su Yang decided to poke at her more after seeing her reactions. The young lady showed surprise when Su Yang called her a virgin. "How did you know that I am still pure?" she asked. "A gift from the heavens, I suppose," Su Yang said with a slight smile before taking a seat in the luxurious chair. From his view, there was at least 100 people already seated in their seats, all whom are waiting for the auction to start. There was also a large stage in the auction room, where a few servants were setting the stage up. Esteemed guest, the young lady suddenly mumbled from behind him. Although esteemed guest may be joking, I am very serious about my services. Su Yang slowly turned around to look at her, who had a reddened face, looking like she'd just ate something spicy. The young lady stood behind Su Yang with her hands clasped tightly together, looking like a nervous child waiting to be scolded. But despite her embarrassment, her eyes did not waver, and she continued to stare at his face with a firm expression on her reddened face. In her 20 years of life, this is her first time acting so bold. What is your name? Su Yang suddenly asked her. Zhang Xiaoying, Burning Lotus Palace's outer court disciple, she replied. You are a disciple of the sect that owns this place? Su Yang was pleasantly surprised to learn of this information. Almost everyone working here today is from the Burning Lotus Palace, with most of us being outer court disciples. It is an annual thing and disciples get selected randomly for the task. Was your sect elder, Madame Wang, also randomly selected to come here today? No. Elder Wang is a permanent personnel here, so she will appear here every year. Su Yang nodded. Thank you for the information. As for your services, I do not need them, nor will I request for them from you. The moment Zhang Xiaoying heard this, her heart somewhat plummeted. To think that even after throwing away all of her shame and pride, she was still turned away, not to mention this was also her first time doing the courting. However, as tears began to appear in Zhang Xiaoying's eyes, Su Yang continued to speak. Though if you still wish to serve me, I will not stop you, he said in a calm voice. Ha! Zhang Xiaoying seemed dazed for a second, as her mind could not comprehend his words fast enough for any reaction. Su Yang did not say anything else and continued to watch the people from the glass wall from above. The room quickly became quiet. Through a few more moments of silence, Zhang Xiaoying suddenly moved. She slowly walked to stand in front of Su Yang, blocking his view. Please excuse me, esteemed guest. Her figure slowly lowered until she was kneeling before Su Yang, right in front of his crotch area. She moved her hands toward the robe sash around Su Yang's waist and proceeded to untie it. While Zhang Xiaoying undressed the lower part of his robes, Su Yang remained unmoving, his gaze still at the auction room beyond the glass wall, looking as though he wasn't even aware of Zhang Xiaoying's movements. When Zhang Xiaoying lowered his pants enough, her eyes widened from shock by the sight of his sleeping brother. This is what a man's nether region looks like, she said to herself inside her head as her trembling hands slowly approached the sleeping dragon. Upon feeling the warmth from Su Yang's penis, Zhang Xiaoying began caressing it, as she didn't know what else to do. But why isn't it erect? Is he not feeling any excitement from this kind of situation? After thinking for a while, she decided to put it in her mouth. The moment Su Yang's unawakened beast entered Zhang Xiaoying's mouth and felt the tenderness of her tongue, it began growing in size. The sudden growth startled Zhang Xiaoying, whose small mouth was barely big enough to fit Su Yang's awakened dragon. However, despite the awkward feeling of having a man's penis in her mouth for the first time in her life, her body began feeling aroused. Zhang Xiaoying began to slowly move her head back and forth a few seconds later, creating faint vulgar noises in the background. It was at this moment the lights in the auction room dimmed, and Wang Shuren appeared on the stage, stunning the crowd with her bewitching beauty. Welcome to the Burning Lotus Auction House's 156th opening. Normally, one of the auction house's servants would be doing the auction after my welcoming speech, but I have decided to change it up for this year by being the one to stand on the stage today, she said with a bright smile on her face, causing the audience to scream from excitement. As the crowd roared loudly, Wang Shuren glanced at the VIP guest room that was slightly above them. As always, we have many exciting and valuable things to be auctioned off today. But before we start, I'd like to give a shout-out to the esteemed guest who is currently residing within that room right there. Wang Shuren casually guided the audience's gazes towards the VIP room, where Su Yang was getting his sword cleaned by Zhang Xiaoying. Luckily for the two, the glass wall was blacked out and looked like a room without any lights to the audience, so they weren't able to see the spectacular scene currently happening inside. But if they knew that they were actually looking at a man feeding creamed soup to a woman with his extra-large straw, then they would surely be shocked out of their minds. As for Wang Shuren, she might even go crazy. But fortunately for both parties, that was not the case. Meanwhile, inside the VIP room, Zhang Xiaoying's movements suddenly froze with cold sweat all over her body when she heard Wang Shuren's unexpected shout-out. And upon feeling many gazes looking at her direction, her heart nearly exploded from anxiety in addition to her guilt. However, a few moments later, when she finally remembered how they couldn't see what she was doing, she began moving her head again and continued sucking Su Yang's personal straw as if nothing happened, slowly becoming more addicted to the sweet taste in her mouth. After giving the welcoming speech, Wang Shuren proceeded to signal a servant to come on the stage with a steel sword in her hands. The servant then placed the sword on the stand that was in the middle of the stage. The sword looked like any more steel sword, however, unlike normal swords, there was faint profound qi that surrounded the blade. I welcome you the first item for today, a spiritual treasure, the spirit sword, Wang Shuren said with enthusiasm behind her voice. Besides normal weapons, there are weapons with profound qi embedded into them, giving them tyrannical and unrivaled powers that normal weapons could never hope to compete with, and these kinds of weapons are called spiritual treasures. Spiritual treasures are only available to cultivators with a sufficient cultivation base, as it requires an enormous amount of profound qi just to control it. However, once a cultivator has the ability to wield a spiritual treasure, they can even split mountains and seas with a single strike. The spirit sword being showcased was such a spiritual treasure, but it was only a spiritual treasure at the lowest grade, the spirit grade. It's really a spiritual treasure. The rumors were true. Crowd instantly became hyped, as this was the first time most of these people have ever seen a spiritual treasure in person. The starting bid for this spirit sword will be 75 spirit stones. Spirit stones are similar to monster cores and are capable of assisting cultivators in their cultivation. Though cultivators also use them as a currency in the cultivation world, especially when it came to buying expensive items that would require an enormous amount of gold. 80 spirit stones. 82 spirit stones. 85 spirit stones. Instantly, the crowd began shouting their offer one after another. After a few minutes of fierce fighting with offers, the spirit sword was sold to a wealthy-looking young man, who looked to be a disciple for some sect, for 137 spirit stones. Although that amount didn't seem much, it should be worth mentioning that someone from a common background would normally not be able to afford a single spirit stone even if they worked for 10 years straight. In this world, 1 gold coin would be able to feed a normal family of 4 for many years, yet a single one of these spirit stone would cost at least 10 gold coins. This showed the difference between cultivators and mortals in the world they live in, and that even if you have the ability to become a cultivator, you may not be able to sustain yourself afterward for long. The requirement to become a cultivator and grow as one would require a large amount of resource and wealth, or else they would never truly grow, hence why all cultivators would join sects, as they are wealthy and powerful organizations that have the ability to provide them with such resources. However, it should be obvious that one would still be required to work relentlessly for these resources, unless they are some kind of super genius that would unconditionally receive the sect's assistance even if they refuse the help. Inside the VIP room, Su Yang barely reacted to the spirit sword. It was not even worthy enough to be in his sights, let alone worth his attention. Instead of paying attention to the auction, he was more focused on the young lady who was still earnestly sucking his divine rod, seemingly bewitched by some sort of spell that made her continuously thrust her head. "Are you done yet?" Su Yang suddenly said. "I know this may be your first time doing this, but you really suck at it." He sighed and continued, "If you continue like this, then I will have no choice but to stop you, as it's beginning to hurt from your techniques." Hearing his heartfelt complaints, Zhang Xiaoying instantly stopped her movements. I apologize to the esteemed guest for my lack of skills, even causing the esteemed guest pain when I am supposed to do the opposite," she said to him with a stiff expression after removing her wet lips from his crotch area. Please allow me a chance to redeem myself, esteemed guest. Zhang Xiaoying said with her head lowered, her voice sounding passionate. This caused Su Yang to raise his eyebrows. Why was she exerting so much effort just to pleasure him? What could she possibly want from him? Surely, she couldn't be crazy enough to do all this just to obtain his attention, right? Go on, Su Yang said after a moment of silence. Upon hearing his approval, Zhang Xiaoying instantly raised her head and smiled brightly. Yes. Zhang Xiaoying slowly stood up and began undressing in front of Su Yang, who watched without uttering a single sound. From the top to bottom, Zhang Xiaoying uncovered her private parts for Su Yang to feast his eyes on. Her hairless figure was slim and well-balanced, with her breasts being neither big nor small, and her pink buds were popping and solid. She had glossy white skin that reflected light despite being inside a room with dimmed lights that was nearly dark. Although her body was not as mature and as well-portioned as Lan Liqing's body, it still had a charm of its own and would easily excite any men with enough karma and blessing to see such an elegant sight. A few moments later, when Zhang Xiaoying finished undressing, she slowly closed her distance to Su Yang. Esteemed guest, please excuse me in advance for blocking your view of the auction. When Zhang Xiaoying was close enough to feel Su Yang's calm breath, her bottom lips were already directly on top of his stiff rod. Time seemed to have stopped for Zhang Xiaoying at this moment, as she was preparing herself to give away her purity to Su Yang, someone she'd just met today and without a proper relationship, if there was even any at all. Regret is a bitter feeling, and you might have to live the rest of your life with this feeling if you continue any further, Su Yang suddenly said to her, giving her one last chance to change her mind. It is better to willingly give my first to someone as handsome and charming as you than to unwillingly lose it to that bastard, Wang Ming, she said with a bitter smile and glistening eyes, and she slowly lowered her body until her bottom lips touched the tip of Su Yang's penis. Wang Ming. Su Yang raised an eyebrow at her words.